All right, so we're going to go ahead and just jump right on in. So like I said, Brother Stephen, I know this is new for you, but just that guy right there, he's been in here for a little while. He can know, just like what we were talking about earlier, when we talk about Hebrew, we were talking about you read it backwards and forwards, right? Well, that's it. In order to read it forwards, we got to read it backwards. So we know that we start from the right-hand side, okay? So we start from the right-hand side. And what's the first thing that we notice about this first word here? Hyphenated, right? Okay. So what's our very first part of our first word? Key, all right? So we have the letter kaf, which we know since it has a dot inside, that letter makes a K sound, right? And since it has the dot inside, that we're going to make that hard K sound like in the word kick or king. And then it's pointed kirik yod, right? So we know that that's a long duration. What type of vowel? I type vowel, right? So a K sound and then an I sound. So key. All right. So key. So what about our next part of our word here? Vo. Okay, so we have the letter vate. Okay, so we know this makes a V sound, but if it had a dot inside of it just like that, it would make a B sound. But it just will make a V sound. And then it's pointed how? Holem wa, right? So this nakud or this vowel point makes what sound? O, right? So we have V, O, vo. So the word is kivo. Kivo. All right, what about our next word? All right, so we have the letter yud, makes a Y sound, and it's pointed with kirik. So that's going to be like Y-E-E, ye, ye. Then we have this letter, and this is the letter sin or shin, right? Now, in this case, it's sin, and I'm doing this for my brother over here. See that mark over the top of that letter? All right. Depending on what side of the letter it's on, because it can either sound like an S or SH. If it's on the left-hand side, it sounds like an S. If it's on the right-hand side, it sounds like SH. So in this case, it's going to sound like an S. And this is called the shva, right? So what type of shva is that? Silent. So this little mark that looks like a colon here, it can have a vocal form or a silent form. And each one of that, and again, that depends on what vowel comes before it. This is all stuff that Brother Alex can show you because he has all the papers and everything else, and he can help you understand that, okay? So this right here is silent because we're following a short duration vowel point. So what does the silent shva do? Closes the syllable, right? So we're just going to pronounce this as yis, yis, yis. Okay? Y-I-S. All right, and then we have the letter mem. So that makes an M sound, and it's pointed patach, right? Patach is a short duration A type vowel. So in Hebrew, A's sound like AH. But when I say long or short, I'm not talking about English vowels long or short, right? I'm talking about how long do you hold the sound. It's either ah or ah. And sometimes it's even shorter than that, right? It's reduced. Okay, so this is a short duration, and then it's followed by the letter chet, right? So a CH sound here. So we have an M, an A, and a CH, mach. Right? Mach. So the word is yismach. Yismach. All right. So what about our next word here? All right. So we have a lamed. So lamed sounds like L, right? Lamed. L. And then it's pointed with kirik, so li. Then we have the letter bait. This is going to sound like a B because it has what? It has dagesh inside, right? So it's going to sound like a B, not a V. And then it's pointed with sere, which is a long duration E type vowel. So in Hebrew, E's are pronounced how? E-H. Eh. Okay? So we have li. And here's another thing. We're going to go ahead and double this B, right? Because it's got dagesh and there's a vowel point in front. So lib, be. Then we have the nun followed by a wa pointed shuruk. This is going to make an oo sound. So nun, oo, nu. Okay? Libenu, libenu. Libenu. All right, what about our next word? Key again, right? We had a key here in the front. Well, look, we have the same exact thing here. So key. Oh, wow. 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 Devorah said if we had a whole bunch of those letters, that we would have a key ring. I'm about to throw this eraser at her, right? All right. So key again. If she's in front of you. So what's our next word here? All right, so we have the letter vate again. Now, like I said, and Stephen, we can go over this at some different times, but you have some letters in Hebrew that change their sound if they have a dot inside of them. This letter is one of them. Because see here, we pronounce it like a B. But over here, we pronounce it as a V. And the only difference is that dot inside. Okay? So here we don't have a dot inside of it. So how are we going to pronounce that one? Like a V. All right? So we have a V sound, and then we have this shva. This is what kind? Vocal, because it's at the beginning of a word. So this is just going to give us a quick E sound after it. So the. Then look here, we have a dot over the right-hand side. So this one sounded like an S. Dots over the left hand. So the dots over the right hand. So it's going to sound like what? SH, right? Shh. And then we have the tsere, EH, and then mem sofit. There's also 5 letters that change their shape when they're at the end of a word. Okay? There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on here. So this letter is the same as that letter, except for this letter is at the end of a word. It still sounds like M, okay? Or the sound that we associate with M. So we have ve, sh, em, veshem, veshem, okay? The Shem. Shem. All right, what about our next word here? All right, so we have the letter kuf. Sounds like a K or a Q with no U. And it's pointed kamatz, long duration A type vowel. So it's like Q-A-H, ka. Then we have the letter dalet here. And how is it pointed? Vocal shva, because we're following a long duration vowel point. When this follows a long duration vowel point, it sounds like E. Again, another rule that there's a lot of them. So we have ka, then we have de, and then, oh, look at what we got here. Now it's got a dot over both sides. So here's where you learn, this is where experience takes over. So we see this letter here, this wa. Some people call it vav, okay? But we have this wa here, and we have both of these dots. Here's the thing. You'll never have a vowel point over the right-hand side of a letter. So that is telling us to pronounce this letter like SH. That and that are telling us to give it an O sound. So we have ka, de, Kadesho. 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 All right, what about this last word here? All right, so we have the letter Veit, pointed kamatz, va. Then we have the letter Tet. Sounds like a T. Tet. You'll learn the names of the letters will tell you what sounds they make. So Tet makes a T sound. Veit makes a V sound, right? Lamed makes an L sound. Well, the Het makes a Ch sound. All right, so that's this guy right here. So we have Va, Ta. Then we have the Het. This makes a CH kind of back of the throat kind of sound, like you got a hairball. Okay? And it's pointed with vocal schwa because we're following a long duration vowel point, right? So, he. And then nun, in sound, wa, pointed shuruk, u sound, nu. So, vatachenu. All right? Vatachenu. Vatachenu. All right, so we've transliterated our sentence. We've taken it from sounds that we didn't know and put it in sounds that we can pronounce. All right, so let's read this together. Let's see how it feels. All right, so we have Kivo yismach libenu, ki v'shem kadesho v'tachenu. Okay, let's do it again. Kivo yismach libenu, ki v'shem kadesho v'tachenu. All right, so ki, what is the word? We're going to translate now. See what this says. All right. Well, we've just made some noise, so now we're gonna actually see what it says. So the word ki, we know that since I use the King James version because that's the thing that most people are familiar with. So the King James, written in the style of English that it's written, the word ki literally translates to for, that, because, on account of. You know, it's telling us why something happens. Okay, so in this case, we're going to say for. Okay, so we're going to do for, not FOUR, but FOR. So this hyphen in here is telling us that the first letter is working on the second, or the first word is working on the second word. So because of something. So what about the word bo? All right, it's a constructed word. It's made up of a prefix and a suffix. Now remember, the word bo means to go or to come, right? To go someplace or show up somewhere. That's what bo means. But that doesn't make any sense grammatically here. So what we look for here, we have a bait used as a prefix means what? In. And then o as a suffix means what? Him. So bo, in him. For in him, and see, that makes a lot more sense grammatically. In him or his. Okay, it's just remember that O means him or his. Okay. What about yismach? The yud can be used as a prefix, which means he will. It just means will with an implied masculinity. Okay. So the yud, this little guy right here, will. So what does that leave us with? That leaves us with a root word. Now, most Hebrew words are made up of 3-letter root words. So in this case, we're left with sin, mem, chet. That is the Hebrew word samach, which means what? What does it mean? Okay, to rejoice or joyful, right? Okay, so in him will rejoice. Okay. Will rejoice. Libenu. Okay, so the first part, leb means heart. And then this new on the end, our, new, us. Yeah, new. That means us, right? Just like Elohenu, our Elohim, all right? Libenu, heart of us, our heart. Okay, libenu. So what's it saying? And we can also say hearts. We could say hearts because it's our, right? So it's telling us, first of all, for in him will rejoice our hearts. So our hearts will rejoice in him, because we have to set up the grammar differently. Okay, because English grammar, the sentence structure is different than it is in other languages. We're the only ones in the world that have this screwed up deal that we got going on with our language. Okay, but it's telling us that in him our hearts will rejoice. Okay, so in him our hearts will rejoice. All right, so we have ki again. Okay, so for that or because. I'm going to put a comma here because we're not starting a new thought. We're just taking a little pause, right, at the comma. So we could say for that or because. In this case, I think that because works a little bit better. Okay, because we're saying that our hearts are rejoicing in him. And we need a reason why. So that's why I think that because work fits better here. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. All right. So our hearts will rejoice in him because why? Beshem. Okay. So the bait in the word Shem means name. Okay. So yeah, his name was name. Yeah. Yeah, Shem, right. Okay, because in name. Now, whose name is it? It's not our name. It's his name, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to put some parentheses in between in and name and put in his. We could even say your. All right. In his or in your name, because we're speaking to him, right? The psalmist is speaking to Yahweh. He's saying, so in you, our hearts will rejoice, or our hearts will rejoice in you, because in your name, now we have the word kadisho. Okay, so the root word is kadosh, which means holy. Then we have this O on the end. And O, used as a suffix, means his, right? So, in his holy name. In the name of your holiness. That's how, if you translate it straight across, and it's kind of funky like that. But what we can say is in his holy name. Again, we got to bounce back and forth sometimes to make it make sense. But because, so we're going to say in your holy name, vatachenu. Okay, so let's look at this logically. Look at it logically. We know that new is a suffix. We know that we're talking second person, right? We're talking us, right? New, us. So we're most likely not going to have, because we're looking for a 3-letter root. If we take that and make that beta prefix, you don't have a 3-letter root. So go with what you know. You know, new means us, and we're talking about us in here. And we're talking about, okay, we're rejoicing. We, us. So take this new to mean us or we. So if we have, now we're looking for a 3-letter root, what do we have? Batach, which means what? We use this word almost every week, and none of y'all ever remember it. What? Very good. Thank you. Yeah, you had to batach. You had to trust in Alicia, but to get it, right? Batachnu, right? We trust. Okay. Remember, you've got the action word, right? The verb here, and then the new onto it. We are doing whatever that action is. So it's actually like trust we or trust us, but we can say we trust. Now the word batach means to trust, depend, to rely. All of those words are synonyms, right? Those all mean the same thing, right? So we have, for in him we will rejoice. Okay? Because, no, we will rejoice. Okay, our hearts will rejoice in him. Sorry. All right? Because in his holy name we trust, or we have trusted. You can say that as well. All right, it all just depends on the context of the rest of the sentence. So what we're looking at here is Psalm 33 and 21. Okay? Which in the King James says, for our heart shall rejoice in him. I like this better because it shows that we're already doing it. It's not a future thing. We're already doing it. All right? Our hearts are rejoicing in him. Why? King James says, because we've trusted in his holy name. And right here, we're saying the same thing. Right? Our hearts are rejoicing in you because we trust in your holy name. Right? If you don't think that the name is important and that you can replace it with a title, you are sadly mistaken. How come every other deity out there in the world has a name except for ours? That's what I want. I've always wanted to know that. Okay? Why does every other deity out there, every other false deity out there, why does it have a name, but our Elohim doesn't have one? Yeah, he gets saddled with a title. That's crazy. He said, this is my memorial name forever. And like we said last night, y'all wasn't here, but that's what Rebbe said last night. Forever is a long time. That's a long time. Yeah, when did that stop? So again, we're looking at Psalm 33 and 21. Okay? Psalm 33, for our heart shall rejoice in him because we have trusted in his holy name. Any questions on this sentence? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead. I don't have my remote control with me today, so I'm going to remotely roll this up, and let's go to our next sentence here. All right. I know these look long, but they're not really because they're pretty simple. Pretty simple. All right, so let's get started. What's our first word in our second sentence? Abi, right. So we have the letter Aleph. Now, Aleph is a silent letter. There's two silent letters in Hebrew, right? Aleph and Ayin, all right? Aleph is a silent letter, but it's pointed with Chetef Patak, so it's going to make a quick ah sound. Then we have the letter Veit, and it's pointed Kirik Yod, long duration I type vowel. So you have a V sound followed by an I sound. Okay? As you progress with this language, you will begin to look for these patterns and the way that the letters are set up. The easiest thing to do when you're looking at a Hebrew word is start at the top. Go down, go back up. Down, back up. It's like a saw. It's like a sawtooth, okay? That's the easiest way to keep your bearings in a Hebrew word. Start at the top, go down, diagonal, down, diagonal. That's the easiest way to do it. Okay, so we have a, v. A, v. All right, what about the next word? All right, we have a yud, Y sound, followed by vocal shava because we're at the beginning of a word. So quick E. So y, yeah. And we move up. And we have a tav, but look here, it's pointed cholemwa. So we have a T sound, and this cholemwa makes an O sound. So we have to. Yeto. Then we start here. Im, mim. So yeto mim. Yetomim. Yetomim. All right, what about the next word? We have the wa, and it's pointed with vocal shava. So how are we going to pronounce that? Ve. Remember, there are sometimes we can pronounce that like a U, but if it has a vocal shava under it, we know it's got to have a V sound. Because it's got to have a consonant to open up the syllable. So ve. Then we have a dalet pointed how? Patach. Okay? Da. Then we have a yud. Okay? So if we double it, then that means we take one Y sound, and where do we put it? On the end of the previous syllable. So instead of being da, it becomes die. Die. Diphthong, right. Okay? D-a-e. Die. Then we pick up the second yud, the Y sound, and what do we do with it? We're going to start off the syllable with that second sound, and we're going to pick up the patach, and what letter is this at the end? Nun Sophie, right? So an N sound. Yan. Okay? So the word is the dayan. Dayan. The dayan. Okay? The dayan. The dayan. All right, so what's the next word? All right, we have aleph. Again, silent letter, but it's pointed with patach. So we know it's going to make an A sound. Short A, right? Ah. Then we have lamed, makes an L sound, and it's got a shva underneath it. It's silent because why? We're following a short duration vowel point. That's going to close it. This becomes al. A-L. Al. A-H-L, actually. You could al. Okay? Al. Then we have the letter mem, which we know makes a M sound. Makes a mem sound. Of course it makes a mem sound. So, and then it's pointed how? With kamatz, long duration A-type vowel. Then we have the letter nun, and how's it pointed? Holemwa, so long O. So n, O. Then we have the tav at the end. We're going to close the syllable with the T sound. Note. Okay? So we have al manot. Almanot. Almanot. All right. Almanot. You okay, bro? You okay? You good? So I want to make sure I don't like to move too fast for people. That's all right. Avi yetomim v'dayan almanot. Now what do we have? What's this next word? Elohim, right? Elohim. All right. This is Ketef Segol, makes a quick E. We have Lamed, pointed Cholem, Lo. And we have He, pointed Kiri, Kyod with Mem Sofi. Im, Him, Elohim. Elohim. All right, what about our next word? Okay, we got the letter bait, so a B sound here, and it's pointed kirik, which is what type of vowel? Short duration I type vowel. So that lets us know we've got a mem here, pointed shava. We know that's silent shava because we're following short duration. Beam, beam, like a laser beam, right? Beam. Okay. And then we have ayin. This is the second silent letter in Hebrew. Okay. But it's pointed holem wa, which is a long duration O type vowel. So that right there is just going to make the sound O. And then we have nun sofit. It has no marks of its own, so we have to slap it onto the end of the previous syllable, right? We're just going to lick it and slap it on there. On. So the word is what? Bimon. 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 All right, what about our last word here? Kadesho again. Okay, remember we had that in the previous syllable, right? Ka. Since we're following long duration, that shva is vocal. De. Sho. Kadesho. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's another vowel point called a meteg, and all it really does is tells us where to put the stress on this word. So it's on the end. All right. Most Hebrew words, the stress is on the last syllable. Okay. And it's the same thing here. All right. But they want you to pronounce it kadesho. Give it a little oomph, right? Give it a little, get in there. Kadesho. All right. So we have transliterated our sentence. So let's read it together, right? Avi yetomim v'dayan almanot Elohim bimon kadesho. Let's do it again. Avi yetomim v'dayan almanot Elohim bimon kadesho. Avi yetomim v'dayan almanot Elohim bimon kadesho. All right. Avi. What does avi mean? Av means father. Now, it can't be my father. So this yud is being used as what? An infix, father of. And the reason why it can't be my father is because of this word. The second word, right? The one that's the next word is a plural word. So it's saying that he's the father. It makes more sense to say that he's the father of something rather than my father and then a plural. That doesn't make, grammatically, that doesn't make sense. So the word is yetomim. All right. So what's our root word here? We know that im is telling us it's plural. So that's another thing. When we see im on the end of a word, that means masculine plural. If we see ot, that means what? Feminine plural. Well, look at here. We have an im here and we have an ot there. So we're dealing with some more plurals later on in our sentence. So we know that the im, we're going to take that out. So what's that leave us for a root word? Yatom. Yatom. Now, yatom means to be bereaved. It means to be lonely. Bereaved and lonely. The word yatom traditionally is the same word that they use for an orphan because they've lost their parents, so they're on their own. They're bereaved because somebody is gone. They're lonely because it's their closest relative. Okay, so the word yetomim would mean what? Orphans, right? Im, it's plural. But we're not going to say orphans because that just sounds awful. But what we are going to say is, and this is very King Jamesian, right? There you go. That's exactly what we're going to do. So, father of the fatherless. Ooh, I said father. No man's supposed to say father. All right. Father of the fatherless. So the wa tells us what? And. This is a prefix. It means and. So what does that leave us with? Dayan. Dayan. All right. Dayan comes from the root word din. To do what? What does the Beit Din do? They make judgment, right? So the word dayan, right? Dayan, it means to adjudicate, to cast judgment. Okay? So in this case, we can it also means to advocate. We can say that. So the dayan and advocate, and then we're going to put the word of in parentheses because in English we have to link words together with other words, right? What we call linking words. So we got to stick them together. So he's the father of the fatherless and advocate of almanot. Almanot. We know ot. So it's a feminine plural. So who are we talking about? What's the gender? That's ima. Ima is mother. All right. Alma, well, spelled this way. Alma means to be discarded, be thrown away. All right. So alma, the discarded. So we know though, what type of plural is it? Feminine. So the idea here is that it's a woman who is on her own. So widow, alma, yes, almana, a widow. Okay, a woman who, and widows a lot of times were shunned. They were discarded by the rest of society, right? As unfair as it said, they had to make their own way. They had no husband, right, for whatever reason, and their family did. Oh, you're not my responsibility anymore. So they basically had to do it on their own, right? Remember the woman of Zarephath? What'd she say? She said, I'm out here getting some sticks. We got a little bit of meal, and I got a little bit of oil in the cruse, which was just, the word cruse just means a small jug. So I had a little bit of oil, a little bit of meal, and I'm going to take this home and make up a couple of cakes, and me and my son are going to eat it, and we're going to die after that because we got nothing. But that's because she was a widow. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. So the word, like I said, the word alma in this case means one who has been discarded. And as sad as it is, that's what it was. And these days we take care of people, you know what I'm saying? Or we try to anyway. But so, and it makes sense because he's talking about a father to the fatherless and an advocate of, I'm going to put the in parentheses. All right. and an advocate of the widow. All right. All right. So we know that the word Elohim means what? Mighty ones, right? Because it's plural, you know what I'm saying? But we know who we're talking about. All right. So here's the thing. We're going to have to link these together so that the sentence makes sense. So, a father of the fatherless and an advocate of the widows is, thank you, is who? Elohim. Okay. Word bimon. The bait is being used as a prefix in this case. So, in, the bait is being used as a prefix in. So, what does that leave us with? Maon. Maon. The word maon means a dwelling. All right. It means an abode. It means a place of rest. It means a sanctuary. It can mean an asylum. It's like calling something a building. There's a lot of things that it can be used for, right? So whatever you use it for, okay. But the word that usually pops up with this is like a dwelling place, a place of safety, a place to get out of the weather. Okay. So we're going to say in dwelling. And then what's the word kadesho? His holy, right? So we're going to have to do like we did last time, where we're going to have to bounce back and forth between the two words to get the full meaning. All right. So a father of the fatherless and an advocate of the widows is Elohim in his holy abode, in his holy dwelling place. Okay. King James 6, this is Psalm 68 and 5. All right. A father of the fatherless and a judge of the widows is what it says. I don't like the word judge here. Okay. An advocate makes better sense, right? He talks about pleading for the widows. Okay. So an advocate is somebody who kind of goes to bat for you. When you say a judge, it makes it seem like, oh, well, you know what I mean? You're getting ready to get slapped down. So I like the word advocate. All right. But it says a judge of the widows is Elohim in his holy habitation. Habitation is the word. But like I said, the word bimon or the word maon, it just means, like I said, it just means like some a dwelling place, somewhere to lay your head. It's not a, it's not like when you think of the word bayit, you think of a house. You know what I mean? When you hear the word mishkan, you think of a tabernacle or a temple of some sort, right? So, like I said, the word maon is just kind of like it's just like a place to lay your head real quick. Somewhere to get out of the sun, get out of the rain, something like that. Okay. But this is saying that he has a holy place that he is at, which is true, right? Hasn't touched this earth, so it can't be corrupted. He's living there, so it's got to be the good stuff. So anyway, like I said, this is Psalm 68 and 5. Any questions on this sentence here? If not, we're going to move on to our paleo word. So, just like Brother Stephen, you're aware that there are different types of Hebrew writing, right? Well, at the bottom, you see those big letters? That's a form of Paleo Hebrew. So that's older than the form that you see higher up on the page. And there's a lot of we usually will take a word and we will put it in paleo and we'll look at the aspects of each letter in it. And it really opens up that word and kind of lets us give us an idea of where the thought process behind that word comes from. So we're going to do that. We're going to move on to our paleo thing here. That's a technical term, paleo thing. You saw it in a book? That's a good place for it to be, I tell you. All right. Neither one of us looking like LeVar Burton. All right, so what's our first letter here? That's the letter mem, right? All right, so what about our next letter? What'd you say? Come on, brother, take a leap of faith. Zayin. 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 He was almost ready. He wasn't quite ready, but he was almost ready. All right, so Zayin. What about this next letter here? That's a bait, right? And then what about this last one here? Chet. So we've got to put some vowels in here. We can't pronounce this word. We got to put some in it. Well, what we're going to do is we're actually going to put an I in between the M and the Z. And then we're going to do an E-A. All right. So it's Mizbeach. 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 All right. So what does this word mean? Well, there's a big clue in this word. Big hint here. And it has nothing to do with numbers or any of that kind of stuff. There's a big clue in this word. That's part of it. It can be either one. So, what do we see here? All right. So here's the clue. It's the Zayin plus the bait plus the chet. So what does that spell? Zabach, which means what? What did we cover last week? Zabach. What does that mean? And you live with the teacher. That's pitiful. Zabach. Zabach. What does it mean? It's a sacrifice. Okay, that's what we talked about last week. It's a sacrifice, right? Zabach. So mizbeach is the word that is translated as the altar. All right, the altar, the brazen altar, the mizbeach. They would kill the animal, dump his blood out, do all that. That's where it'll happen. All right. Nasty business. Nasty business. All right. But let's take a look at these letters real quick. What's the letter mem? Now, we talked about there were a few things that were getting thrown out. All right. Water on the top level, right? But it does mean force. It means on the positive side, it's force, it's anointing, right? So we could say something forceful. We could say anointed. All right, Zayin. Now, it can be a weapon or a tool, right? And you're right. In this form, don't think of it as a plow. Think of it as a tool. Because a plow is a tool. And honestly, a sword is a tool as well. Right? That's exactly what they're tools. Yes, you know, you can kill somebody with one. And that's my point. A tool is a tool. It's what you employ it for that makes it either a positive or a negative thing, right? And we know, where does that come from? It comes from the thoughts and the intents of the heart, right? That's why the Father looks on the heart, because he's like, I see what's really going on here. He can see it. I can come over here and smile in Brother Alex's face all day long. And then as soon as he gets in his car and drives away, I just talk bad about him. All kind of what a dog he is. But my point is, it's the intent of the heart, though, right? So what we see here is a tool. All right, what about the bait? What is the bait? All right, it's a house, right? It's a house, a tent, a dwelling place. We know that the Mishkan was whose dwelling place? It was the Abba's for a while, right? All right, and then the chet is what? It can be a ladder, it can be a separation. If it's a separation or a boundary, why does he set boundaries? To keep people safe, to keep them separate. The word holiness means what? Set apart for a particular reason. It doesn't mean I'm walking around 28 hours a day. Oh, I'm so holy. I've prayed for 83 hours straight and I've never done nothing wrong. That's not holiness. That ain't holiness. That's an outward show of self-righteousness is what that is. Okay? You like that, don't you? That is an outward show of self-righteousness. That is not holiness. Okay? That is not holiness. Holiness is being set apart and sanctified for a particular reason. And it says that he is holy and his name is holy. He is set apart and his name is set apart. Okay? So we can look at this as holy or sanctified. Right? Ain't that what old boy said? He said, be ye holy as I am holy. Right? What he's saying? Be set apart because I'm set apart. Yeah. Walk like me. Don't walk like what you see out there with the long ZZs dragging the ground and making the flowery prayers in the marketplace. Yours ain't dragging the ground, brother. So. But see what I'm saying? Ain't that what he said? They love the adoration of who? Of men, not of their Father. That's why they do all that funky stuff. And why did all the schools fighting with each other? Because this one is more holy and this one is more holy and that one and da-da-da-da. And that's the reason why Yahushua told him, he said, you take the traditions of men and teach them as if they're the word of Elohim. Because you care more about your traditions than what the word says. That, my friend, is not being holy. You know? That's right. I'm not going, when I get there, I'm not going to be judged by what Rashi said. And I'm not going to be judged by what Rambam said. Or any of them guys. Okay? The judgment that's going to come against me is going to come where? From the word, right? It's going to come from the Torah, right? It's going to come from Moshe, who got it from the Father. You know what I'm saying? It ain't going to come from any of these other fellas. So we have the altar here. Now, we've heard a lot about the altar in our lives, we've heard a lot about the altar, haven't we? Anybody who's been in the church for any amount of time, they all come down to the altar. Come down to the altar. You can pick it back up when you get back to go to your seat. We've seen it. That's it. Unfortunately, we've seen it. Okay? So we've heard all this about the altar, but what was its purpose? What was it there for? It was there so that we could take our sacrifices, our sins, or whatever we did. We could take that, right? It gets put on the altar, and that intent is then directed to the Father, right? And when we place a sacrifice on the altar, there should not be any trying to get it back. We knew a guy, this is no joke. We knew a guy, he went down there to the altar. I got to get away from these cigarettes. I got to get away from them. All right, brother. So he took them out of his shirt pocket, his lighter and all. He set them right there on the altar. And they prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And he was crying and snotting and everything else. And asked, how you feel, bro? Oh, I'm saved. I'm delivered. I'm blah, 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 blah. And then he went to grab him back, put him right back in his shirt pocket, and went right back to his seat.
I was about to say that he grabbed one from the room.
And he come right back next week. He come right back next week. Oh, I need deliverance from these cigarettes. Come on, man. You're going to have to do something. You know what I'm saying? You got to do something, man. You pick them back up, you know. So when we put something on the altar, we're not supposed to be trying to snatch it back off. Okay? Because at this altar, our offerings are turned into, if they're true offerings, unblemished offerings, then they are turned into sweet aromas to the Father. He likes that. He likes it when we sacrifice those things that are holding us back. We talked about this last week too. When we have things that are holding us back, he likes for us to give that up. Because that's not doing nothing but hurting us, whatever it may be. You know what I mean? I ain't pointing no fingers. We all got ashes, right? We all got, when I say ashes, I'm talking about we all have past experiences, okay? You know. So when we put that stuff down there, that's where we're supposed to leave it. All right? And these things become a sweet savor, the word says. It becomes a pleasant smell to the Father. He becomes pleased with that. And at this altar, this is where we change nature. Stick with me. Because we talked about what in there today? Talking about fire in there, right? And what was on this altar? It was full of fire, right? Special fire. It wasn't no regular fire. That's what got Nadab and Abihu, right? So this was some special fire that had come down from heaven itself. That's why they had to keep it burning. It was the original one. So this is where fire comes and it consumes the sacrifice. Well, what does fire do? It changes the nature of things, right? You can take base metals, you can take gold that's, say it's 10 karat, and you can put it in the fire and refine it and all, and now maybe it's 16 or 18. So how do we get it to 24? We got to keep putting it through the fire, right? Progressively hotter fire, longer exposure time, and that gets all the, what they call the dross, the trash, the garbage out of it, right? And then it just becomes, now, sir, you may have a 5-gallon bucket full when you put it in there and only come out with a thimble, but what that thimble that you come out with is going to be the good stuff, right? It'd be an expensive thimble. But like I said, fire changes the nature of things. And here we see that what we bring is reduced to ashes. And again, those ashes are what? There are past experiences. But then what happens to them? What happened to the ashes that were on the altar? They were taken away to a clean place. So the Father can take that thing that we sacrifice, that nasty thing that we sacrifice, whatever it is, and it gets taken away, and it gets taken away to somewhere that we can't get to. Doesn't mean that we forget about it, because we use that memory to do what? Improve ourselves and help others. Okay? We use what we have been through to help somebody else in need. That is why we go through what we go through. Simple. That's why we go through the trials and the tribulations. Oh, God isn't supposed to put you. I beg to differ. That's not what the word says. Yahweh will put you in a situation so that you can live through it, so that you can help somebody else down the line. That's what he does. So, he does this why? So that we can walk in new life. We get rid of the thing that was hurting us. We hold on to it. We don't forget. But then we use that to walk in new life. So what was this altar then? Plain and simple, it was a forceful and anointed tool in the house of the holy or the sanctified. Right? Now, we don't have this altar anymore. We don't have the tabernacle. We don't have the temple. We don't have this. But just like Rebbe said earlier, the scripture says, we are now the temple of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. So guess what? We got an altar in us. That's the heart. Because whatever you put in the heart, that's what's going to come out. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? So what you fill that heart with is what's going to come out. Whether it's good things or bad things. What happened when they put some strange fire on this altar? Them old boys got killed. He wasn't like, now y'all know I told you don't do that. He didn't do that. He lit them up. He lit them up. Here's the thing to remember, guys. Yes. Sometimes these lessons are hard. Sometimes the things that we have to go through are hard. They're difficult, right? They're tough. But when you think about it, everything that you lose from your former life is a tremendous gain in the next one. When we lose the pettiness and we lose this and we lose the gossiping and the backbiting and we lose all, when we lose these things, that makes us better, right? And makes us more suited to serve him when we reach the end of this thing. When we do what? Cross the finish line, right? So remember, there may not be a standing altar. And that's why it was so bad when they brought back that altar from Damascus and tried to put it in his house. That wasn't his altar. That would, you know what I mean? Try and take something that don't belong there and use it in his service. You can't do that. You can't do that. Exactly. And everyone. So, like I said, let's remember that this heart, this is the altar that we have things on now. Right? So let's allow it to be an anointed tool in this house, in this sanctified house. Because you're definitely set apart for a purpose. Right? And that's what the scriptures say? It says that you are bought with a price. Okay? That you were bought with a price. Scripture says that we are a peculiar people. Now, that's the thing. When you take a look at the King James, it's written in the 1611 and it uses the word peculiar. When we see peculiar, when I was a Pentecostal, I thought, oh man, that's all right. Because people say we're weird and strange anyway, so that's okay. That ain't what that means. The word peculiar in the King James means that you've been purchased. You know what I'm saying? Not that you're weird or odd. It means that there's a price been paid for you. And so we need to remember how dear that price was. Right? All right. Well, I think I'm done. I think I've said all I need to say. Love and appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for being here in our class today. We're going